Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with another Japanese deep dive into some more upcoming test disc reviews for our videos. Eiichi Kudo's Samurai Revolution Trilogy set, featuring all three films, packed full of special features and some really awesome brand new artwork commissioned for this edition, coming on the 30th of March 2026. I've got some early test discs to cover these films, to dive into special features and to watch these for the very first time, which I've been really enjoying doing so. And we are continuing on with this box set with disc 2, The Great Killing, released in 1964 from the same director, of course, exploring a very interesting decade in Japanese history known as the Tokugawa Shogun Age, which is something that I give mad credit for in terms of disc 3 for the 11th Samurai special feature. Not to jump ahead of, of this review, just a wonderful extra on that third disc, basically talking about that decade and giving some context to what these films are, which something that I said in my previous reviews in terms of the 13 Assassins original and remake. You know, in terms of films, you can jump into a film, you can be a casual watcher and just expect the film to kind of explain things and to understand what's going on. And sometimes you can just have a good piece of entertainment. Some things require a little bit more research. These series of films, this trilogy set, basically depicts that decade, which, again, something for myself I've referenced to, I need to do more research on and to kind of explore. And thanks to the wonderful special features on these editions, I've got a little bit more insight into that and allow me to prop myself to kind of explore more, maybe read more books, explore documentaries, understand more of the different decades of Japanese kind of real historical culture that was affecting these films during the time. Of course, these are 60s films depicting 18th century kind of, political movements that were happening during that time. And it's so fucking fascinating, so interesting. And knowing this now in context of all three films, which I'll be exploring with the upcoming one being the 11th Samurai being the final one on this trilogy set, makes a lot more sense in terms of what's going on. You've got essentially a decade's worth, maybe more, of basically martial law. You've got a system that has basically closed itself off in terms of the rest of the world, in terms of other wars, other kind of, political shifts going on in terms of America coming in with the Black Sea. And you've got a system which is eating itself alive. You've got the samurai, which is something that's explored within all three films, especially in this one, which I'll get into in terms of The Great Killing, the samurai being stagnant. It's peacetime, air quote, but it's not actually peacetime. It's a sense of form of control. It's martial law. It's obedience. It is closing themselves off against everyone else. And it is the false kind of, depiction of peace, but it's actually not. It's just a form of control. And I think it's so interesting that the shogun is essentially law. It is, the heavens are speaking through the shogun. Anything that the shogun or the shogun's brother or anyone connected to that series of power is essentially God. Do you stand by and kind of, maintain your life and miss your opportunity to kind of, go out in a blaze of glory, essentially? Or do you fight for what you believe in? Do you fight for injustice? Do you fight for a better tomorrow, a better future? There's so many aspects to kind of talk about. It's kind of hard to do within a limited amount of video, but in terms of where I'm going with this, essentially, especially with The Great Killing, very similar to the 13 Assassins and 11 Samurai, which has similar kind of themes, which you'll realize when you watch this trilogy, which is why it's called the Samurai Revolution Trilogy set. It's set within different decades of the same kind of regime, essentially, I guess, of the, martial law, imperial order, the Shogun Age, sealing itself off against the world. And you've got basically samurai that don't want to be samurai anymore. They want to be merchants. They want to be kind of, there is more need and demand of farmers and merchants and crops, and there's brothels, and being a samurai isn't what it made out to be anymore. There's no sense of righteous cause to go after. This idea of you're training, you're getting yourself into a position of power, but there is no war to go against because it is peacetime, right? And the idea that the shogun, the kind of the highest position, the families, can be so easily insulted and so quick to violence and being so pompous and so arrogant. This one, very similar to the others, is a series of cover-ups, a series of kind of hush-hush, we don't want to deal with it, it topples the whole thing. And this one, I think, is quite an interesting one because, as mentioned, it's sort of like the more darker, bleaker, more messed up version of the 13 Assassins. Released with that one you can get behind the characters, you can understand why is at stake. It's essentially a bloodbath from the start of the film. You've got the shogun's kind of like, advisories basically saying, I want to purge kind of assassination attempt that is upcoming. Series of information that is not very clear at the start. I do think it's something you really need to pay attention to. I think even more so compared to the original first entry on the set, because information is kind of sparingly, and if you're paying attention to what's happening and reading between the lines, understanding who these characters are, you understand what the big picture is in terms of what's going on. Families that want to maintain their power, they want to make sure this lord is the inheritor of the shogun's power, be the ruler of the land and having control over many things. And you've got a series of advisories and other samurai and other families there that basically want to maintain that power, maintain that position. You've got the opposition, the resistance that are basically forming together to assassinate and to take back control a little bit. And it is, at the start of the film, basically broken in part, essentially. You've got multiple people being killed that are part of this kind of like, rebellious kind of coup that's kind of about to take place. And you've got different people that kind of enter the scream, and they're in different states mentally, physically. They're running away, they're cowards. You've got a woman involved, which is womanhood, which has some influence in terms of what's happening. I love her dialogue scenes in the film as well. And you've got a religious fanatic who ends up becoming a rapist in the film, who still believes in that cause, but is completely lost his goddamn mind. And supporting characters also trying to help them in various ways. And through the actions of these individuals and the supporting characters, you understand what's going on in terms of the landscape, in terms of, again, the brothels. You've got the everyday samurai, which is abandoned that post to become, again, a merchant, and basically saying, there's a great scene in the film where he's saying, well, if I go out there and die for a cause which isn't really my cause and live by the samurai code, who's going to look after my family? Who's going to put food on the table? I don't have an hour to spare or 2 hours to spare. I need to make money to support myself and my family. And it definitely requires a lot more of your attention to see what is happening. As mentioned, it's kind of feeding information bit by bit, through each character, you're understanding what's at stake. And I'll be completely honest, a lot of these characters in the film are not particularly likable. They are very morally grey in terms of their actions, in terms of their position, but having context in terms of what's going on, in terms of the bigger picture, having who these actual shogun families are kind of thing and what they're doing in the film, it's understandable. You get it. Men in this film break very easily in different ways, being a coward or a religious fanatic rapist, for fuck's sake. And you've got women in the film that are also trying to maintain a sense of class and sense of honor, more than the actual men will. And you've got people that are running away from duty or running away from their code, who are doubting the system. And then you've got the rich and the powerful who are basically so kind of arrogant and so fearful and paranoid that they are just scrambling at this point. They're just trying to we need to get every single one. We need to get them interrogated. We need to follow them. We need to do everything we can. And, getting outbursts of kind of anger, in terms of, I don't want excuses. I give you an order, execute that order to the T, essentially. And all leading up to a massive kind of, bloodbath in this kind of village, really utilizing the location. And again, one of the strengths from this whole trilogy from the director is his basically master of shadows, master of lighting, which is an extra on the edition, which I'll talk about soon, where he is really experimenting with the cinematography, really experimenting with lighting and background shadows, and editing, sound work is really fucking incredible. And just some stuff that I think is really advanced for 60s kind of thing at the time, and really kind of playing around with the edit of the film, having so much footage to work with and having so much creative style and visual flair. It makes it a really compelling film to watch. And there's no honor here, there's no sense of justice or kind of higher up position. It's just people being collateral damage. There is explosions, there are scrappy kind of fighting at play and backstabbing. You've got people falling into water, brawl kind of fights, civilians being caught and killed alongside, and people scrambling to carry out this assassination attempt at great personal cost. And even by the end, without ruining the film, it's just done in an act of kind of pure rage and as internal kind of sacrifice. Reason why it's never had a remake. because it's a very cultural film. It's a very Japanese film, whereas something like The 13 Assassins can be adapted later on, can be kind of a bit more commercialized within its kind of scope and its simplistic kind of storytelling. This one, while being simple as well in terms of paper, it is deeply political, very heavy within its kind of characters, a situation that takes place. It's violent war towards its third act. Definitely one to kind of brace yourself for, at least from my personal opinion anyway. Now, in terms of the special features for The Great Killing, we have a brand new audio commentary from David West. Really excellent audio commentary. Again, listen to about half of it. Great insight. The guy really knows his stuff. You know, I'll leave it for the audio commentary to kind of speak for itself. You've got a brand new extra called The Magician of Light and Shadow, which is a wonderful special feature talking about the technical aspects of the director and his utilization of the sets, lighting work, which is something that I've noticed really strongly within all three films. And it's fantastic, you know, for 60s movies, you know, being the fact that a lot of the movies at the time were basically, you know, very modern, colorized 60s films, where these ones are trying to be like 50s movies, going back to Akira Kurosawa kind of age in terms of Seven Samurai and being reminiscent of those kind of movies. Wonderful special feature that really gives you a lot of insight. And the last two extras are archival, with being Samurai Gorilla Part 2, which is a continuation of you know, people involved in these movies during the original 60s, talking about the director, talking about filming and being on location. Really excellent archival extras that I think pulled from maybe French DVDs potentially. I think originally these films were only available in France, so I can tell that they pulled kind of French extras, maybe interviews that were done during the time, which is great, and getting them here on these editions. And the last extra is a remembrance of the director from the actual brother, I believe stepbrother from the director, just talking about like a 13-minute extra, just talking about basically himself, the director, and his TV work, and how, you know, Toei were basically trying to break into TV, and he originally did a 13-episode mini-series, which didn't do very well, and you're getting kind of filmmakers to do, you know, episodical kind of storylines for TV, and it's just kind of an interesting kind of time these films were being made in, and what the priority was in terms of the company and the creative vision, and what movies were selling well, what ones were doing well. What is your favorite from this trilogy set? The 13 Assassins, The Great Killing, 11 Samurai. We'd love to know your thoughts and impressions. So in the meantime, guys, I'm for reviews. So yeah.